Would anyone, for our citizen speak portion this evening, would anyone care to make a comment, or does anybody have anything they'd like to share before we get started? Hearing none. Before we get to our first item, I'm going to read a very brief statement, and then we're going to make one quick announcement, and then we're going to get underway. So if you would bear with me just for 2 minutes. In the early hours of Saturday morning, the board was notified by our police chiefs of a tragic accident on Walpole Street. When an accident involves loss of life, the entire community mourns. As a board and as a community, we express our deepest condolences to the families involved. We also express our support to the classmates, friends, teachers, members of the school administration, the staff of the high school, middle school, and the elementary schools. We also wish to extend our thanks and our support to Sergeant Joe Wallard, to Officer Donnie Cale, along with Jared Lehman, who is at the desk at our emergency dispatch center. To all of our volunteer members of our firefighting staff, particularly Engine 1, who responded, as well as the paramedics on the scene. To the neighbors who left their homes and who were the first on the scene. We ask you to join with us in a moment of silence and support for our community. Thank you all very much. Just a quick reminder, the funeral will be held in Dover tomorrow, and at the Church of the Most Precious Blood, Center Street will be closed for a period through traffic, and just remind everybody to be mindful of that. In addition, one quick note for this evening's agenda. We will have no agenda item number 1.7 with regards to the annual town meeting warrants. We had we have a supply, we call it a supply chain issue, but we were unable to get the warrants back to us. We will have them for next week. Chris, anything else to add on that item?
No, John, thanks.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to item number 1. Kate, this is for you. Kate O'Brien, our Assistant Town Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to share my screen here. So. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right, here we go. So thank you for having me tonight. I'm happy to present to you what has been a year and a half of a lot of work and a lot of meetings. So tonight I'm going to present to you this presentation that basically outlines all of our revised personnel rules and regulations that we've been working on, also with some additional policies that were recommended through our HR audit that we had about a year and a half ago. So there were two main events that really kickstarted this whole process. The first one was the HR audit, as I mentioned. We had 4 policies that were recommended to us by the consultant that we add and update. And the second was our Harper's payroll project. At the start of that, we came across a lot of inconsistencies that we had to fix in order to move on to the next step of Harper's payroll. So with that, we'll be going over these policies: hours of work, holiday leave, personal leave, sick leave, vacation leave, Corey policy, workplace violence, conduct, civility, and our policy against discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. So actually, let me correct myself. I will not be going over each and every policy, but those are the ones that are before you tonight for approval. But I'm just going to touch upon some of the new things, I would say, or some of the updated things, just a quick overview. And also, so again, this has been a complete team effort as usual. So everyone from Carl Valente, who painstakingly, updated every version of every policy, to the personnel board, who met many times, Jerry Lane, Dave Sullivan, and Chris. So with that, I'll go to my first slide. So our hours of work policy. This one, this one was our first one and probably our biggest policy. And again, there wasn't a lot of major changes, but the biggest thing was that we had to document everything in a policy that we were already doing. And so that included hours of work. So we defined it, full time. In order for a 35-hour work week, start times must be between 8 and 9 a.m. and stop times between 5 and 6. For part-time employees, obviously that's the sole discretion of the department head, appointing authority, whatever as far as office coverage. And then also, we have a legal obligation to provide a mealtime 30 minutes if you work more than 6 hours. So really documenting that and putting that into the policy was important. Okay, the other, I would say, change here, and just on paper, would be our schedules for exempt employees. So right now, it says a 40-hour work week, but in actuality, it's a 35-hour work week. So beginning July 1st, 2022, exempt employees will be changed to a 35-hour work week. So this will just reflect the actual current contact hours that exempt employees work. Really, the only change of it is in writing for the policy and then reporting for the payroll. So we need to make sure that all hours, that we report are actual hours worked equals actual hours paid. So really, we're just crossing our T's and dotting our I's when it comes to this, and making sure everything's consistent. So to touch upon this a little bit more, I kind of go in here about, why we did it. And first of all, the town's HR audit, this was one of their main recommendations, was just to clear this up. And our staff contact hours did not align with our hours in the policy. The move of exempt employees from 40 hours a week to 35 a week. Obviously, there's exceptions to this, and like the highway department, for example, or if another appointing authority prefers another schedule. And also, I know some different town buildings have different hours. So there are some exceptions, but for the most part, this will cover everyone. Another reason why we had to do this was time reporting inconsistencies. Now with Harper's, everything will be the same as far as how we report vacation days, sick days. In the past, there's some confusion about our half-day Friday and how you would report that. So again, we're getting everything documented and on paper and consistent. I'd say consistency is the key here. Okay. So for the holiday leave, not too many changes. We added Juneteenth Day, and we also really clarified the weekend holidays. So any holiday occurring on a Sunday, recognized on a Monday. Holidays occurring on a Saturday, recognized on a Friday. There's some other things here for exceptions, but this wouldn't apply to a lot of departments, mostly the library. And in that case, if staff is regularly scheduled to be open on a Saturday holiday, it's recognized on a Saturday. So for that, we're just doing the same policy as the state. You know, the state follows the same thing, so that is what we're doing. So sick time, a few minor changes, but so written approval from the town administrator, a maximum of 12 days of sick leave may be advanced at the time of hire based on previous service or similar benefit in a previous position. So this is so like a new employee will not accrue monthly sick leave for that period of time equal to the number of hours advanced. This is definitely just something, you know, we could have up our sleeve HR wise when we're recruiting. You know, we have someone coming from a community who's been there for 10, 15 years, you know, it's a tough pill to swallow switching jobs and starting from zero when it comes to your accruals. So this, you know, this is just another opportunity at the town administrator's discretion. Let's see. So the other change we have here, oh, hold on. Fancy presentation, but hard to manage. So beginning July 1st, 2022, exempt employees are presumed to be working minimum 35 hours a week and will accrue 7 hours of sick leave monthly. Any previously earned time or unused sick leave will be carried forward hour for hour to FY23. So also employees may be allowed to use up to 10 days of accrued sick leave per fiscal year to attend to a serious illness or injury of an immediate family member. This was already in our bylaws. I just, you know, I think not a lot of people knew about it, but it's an important thing to know as something we provide to our staff. Vacation leave. One big change here is employees may now carry over up to 10 days into the following fiscal year. Previously, it was 5 days. Especially during COVID time, this caused a lot of problems for staff, especially people who like to use their vacation at a certain time of year, and they would end up just losing the time if you couldn't use it. So this just provides our employees with more flexibility to use their earned time, and you know, we want them to use their vacation. So that was definitely on recommendation of staff. Another quick point here is separation from service of town. This is kind of similar to the sick leave one that I just discussed, but if an employee left the town in good standing and returned within 2 years, they would be entitled to receive credit for prior service for the purpose of calculating continuous service for vacation accrual. Again, this just is a good HR tactic. If an employee leaves, you know, regrets it, in good standing, wants to come back, we're able to recognize their previous service to the town. And here we have, I'll just go into the 4 policies that were recommended by our HR consultant. Our core policy. This is a best practice for every community. It decreases liability for the town. This is new, and it will be for every position. Every position will have to go through a query check. Previously, it was only specific positions depending on the department. So this will be new for us. We've been practicing it. And like I said, I don't know any other community who doesn't do this. So the second one is our workplace violence policy. This is a best practice. You know, it is our responsibility to provide a workplace that is conducive to personal safety, security, and free from intimidation, threats, or violent acts. So again, we're recommended to have this policy. And the third one here is our policy against discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. This policy is not a new one, although it's been updated. Usually discrimination and harassment policies were separate. Now it's best practice to join them. So that's what we did here. We also need to update it to reflect 2022. So, we added technology in there, harassed by technology. So this policy covers full-time, part-time, temporary, seasonal, elected officials, volunteers, interns, applicants, third parties doing business or having contact with the town. Same as with our conduct and civility policy, a best practice. Also, sign of the times. I think it's good to be reminded of how we should all treat each other. And it sets the standard for everyone involved in town communications. And I would like to add that, the civility and conduct policy also applies to everyone that is mentioned in the policy against discrimination. So, that was important to us. That was important to the personnel board as well. So, going through this, I think it's always good to look back on all the work that was done and how much effort this took from everyone. This really started in earnest in July 2020 and ended, I think last week, the personnel board, we just passed the final policy. So a lot of meetings, we had in the summer, we had a meeting with staff, introduce these policy changes, ask for their comments. We did take some of theirs in consideration, especially in our vacation policy. I think I counted 10 times the personnel board met just with these policies, not even counting everything else that we're doing, the classification and compensation study. So again, a lot of effort from everyone. The next step would be, if the board decided to adopt them, would be we would just correlate everything into one and pass it out to staff to have them sign off, read them, sign off, and then we put it up on our website, and those would be our new personnel rules and regulations. So just as a heads up, because of this process makes you kind of sit back and look at what we're doing and what we can do better. We've also started working on an extended sick leave policy, sick bank basically. Again, very common in communities, and there was definitely a staff need for this. This is something that was recommended in one of our all staff meetings. So we are working on one more, we promise. But so in the next few weeks or months, we'll be coming to you to discuss this policy. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. If anyone has any questions, again, I want to thank the personnel board for meeting several times a month for the last year and a half regarding all of this. They really do have the staff's best interest in mind, and I just want everyone to know that they work very hard. So I'm definitely grateful for that. And also Carl Valente wrote all of these policies, every revision, every change. So again, thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
So Kate, while you were excellent summary, thank you very much. And I just think that there should be like a footnote in the town code of conduct civility where the disagreeable clause, I think that should be named the Repetti clause. So, when he states that we can all disagree without being disagreeable, there should be like a footnote under that, because Robin will never sign off on that. But, Robin will say we can be disagreeable because she's the boss. So it should definitely be called the Repetti clause. Jim, wouldn't you agree? May not be paying attention, but so thank you, Kate, for that. Robin, comments, questions?
Kate, thank you so much for putting together that presentation. So just a question / comment, and I could be asking this question and you answered it already and I wasn't paying attention, but I'm gonna ask it in any event. So coming from corporate America, the whole vacation and sick time rollover is very different. So, and companies are moving towards, and I'm sure Mary knows this, like just a big bucket of paid time off. and they don't differentiate. So what I wanted to try and get a sense of, I'm assuming, because you did mention this, that what the changes we're making are what the rest of the communities do. And for us, we view this as a way to continue to attract talent, the right kind of talents when we have jobs that are opening. So if you could just comment on that, because I would think that anybody in the community that is coming from the private sector, it's just a very different environment there.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, comment. It's funny because I think the sick policy was probably the one that took the longest and the most meetings for all of us. Because we really tried to blend in, take in consideration best practices for municipalities. But then there's always the private sector is doing something completely progressive, and it's not really progressive anymore. It's kind of ignored. But the reality is communities are just not there yet. So I think we came to, a really good concession. And we also said we would check back in about 8 months, I think, about how this sick policy is going, feedback from staff. And, so we did promise to check back regarding the sick policy to see. But you're right, that is, we had all those discussions, comparing to the private sector, which really do not, like you said, you just get a bucket of time and then you use it as you need to. But I don't think I know one municipality that's doing that right now. And we definitely asked a lot of questions, and Carl Valente reached out to a lot of communities as well. So I definitely think that's where we're headed in the future. Just right now, we couldn't do it for a few reasons, but we're definitely gonna get back with the personnel board and assess how it's going.
I think one of the things we talked about was the fact that with such a small group that, if one person goes out, then the office is closed, kind of thing. It's not that bad, but that's the point. And so you have a lot of impact if you do that. And one of the things we did say is, if we do this, we're stuck. You're not going to deliver back out. So that's why we decided to delay and think our way through this.
Okay. So the catalyst for this was input that we got from the consulting study, along with employees' requests to enhance the sick time.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think the whole Harper's project made us force us to kind of look at everything, which is great, because it's been a long time since these have been updated.
Right, and I mean, I kept looking, the pages just kept going on and on and on in your presentation, so it's certainly indicative of all the work you did. So it seems as though there were numerous policies that needed to be updated.
Absolutely, yep.
Thanks, Robin. Bob?
So I'll say the same thing that I said last time when we were talking about the length of time it took to do the licensing for the cell tower. There's an awful lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that people aren't aware of. And when you do a project or a presentation like this, and you're talking about 18 months of work involving several people, it is an impressive, accomplishment to bring that off. And so I want to thank everybody who participated, and it looks like we sort of come up to snuff, right? We got where we needed to be based on two things: based on the recommendations that have been made by several people, and sort of the left-handed way of getting there, because the system that we're putting in requires some conformity, some consistency in how data is entered into the system, so the numbers are crunched right. So that's sort of a serendipitous byproduct of Dave trying to get us to do Harper's. But both things should I think people should be very, very pleased and very proud of the accomplishment. It's a big deal. The other thing, I think Robin's point was quite interesting. Robin is still in corporate America. My memory of corporate America is fading somewhat, but I would really think it'd be wise to keep an eye on what's going on in the overall workplace, because there's just tremendous change. And we really don't necessarily want to be cutting edge, but I think we want to be aware and take advantage of the best opportunities, to handle our staff properly. So I think that's a very good note. And I don't know if Dave Havlin and Jim Rapetti heard John's opening statement. John, maybe you want to remind them in case they don't want to hang around.
With regards to item number 17, Bob?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if they did or not, but Jim, David, we're on with regards to item number 7, which is the warrants. The warrant is not available. So I mentioned in our open remarks that item 7 is not going to be covered this evening. We're going to cover it next week at our next meeting on the 3rd.
So Jim, I know you want to hang out, but
Yeah, and Jim, you also you didn't respond when I gave you the opportunity to donate to the disagreeable clause. There's naming rights. Kate mentioned that we're entering naming rights into the Code of Conduct and Civility Policy, and I thought that Jim Rapetti would want to jump all over the disagreeable clause.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was late. I had to work late, so I missed the first 15 minutes. But I did enjoy Kate's presentation. I thought that was great. Thank you, Kate.
So lastly, Kate, where did you come up with the animation? That looked pretty cool. Who did it? Who did the animation?
That was me. I can take credit for that. Yeah.
All right. All right.
It was a
Creative.
really nice presentation, Kate.
Thank you.
It really was.
I just need to figure out how to work it, but there.
Come with time, practice.
Yeah. So Kate, Bob, Robin, anything else that would you like to add? Anything else? I'm gonna go to the motion part if there's no other comments or questions or concerns from us.
I'm good, John.
Robin, good? I move to authorize the town's personnel rules and regulations policies as presented and ask for a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor, aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Spinner.
Wonderful. Kate,
Thanks again, Kate. Thanks, Mary.
well done. Mary, don't go away.
Oh, go away.
Don't go away. Because Mary Kerrigan, you are right up right now. We're going to move to item 2 and introduce
Well,
Mary.
this again is a short item. I just wanted to be able to, we've talked over we have been 3 years into the process with the administrative evaluation process. So I'm really here to ask you, how do you think it's going? Are you getting what you need in terms of the evaluation process? Are the projects being well outlined? Are you getting enough information? What we wanted to know is does this need any change after 2 years and going to year 3? Or are you comfortable where you're at? And if that's true, then I think that what we would do would be to just create what I would suggest that I think is a problem is the document needs to be retyped and reset. Just the paperwork, because it's not well, I don't know how it was put together, but I don't think it's two things in place. So I would definitely think we should change the document. And the question is, do you want to look at differently in any way to the evaluation process? Are you getting enough information about the projects? Are you seeing enough information in the comments that you feel like you've got a big picture? And I wanted to just ask you how you feel about that.
Okay, thank you.
Do you need me to do that? Or is this place in part and now really is just administratively? Or do you need me in some way? Because I'm not sure whether my role needs to continue or not. And that may be it's something you want to talk about amongst yourselves and then come back. But I think that, you know, is it in a good place? Do you need some changes from me? You know, we should figure out the document a little bit and then decide if you want any changes or if we're locking it down. You know, we've had 2 years now to decide.
Okay.
I didn't expect an answer tonight. A comment, if you, from you, fine. I just wanted to give you something to think about.
Well, thank you. It is something to think about, and Mary, it's something that has evolved, and this process has for me in my tenure, and I'll let Robin and Bob speak to how they feel. It's been an evolution, and it's been a rather dramatic change because of the changes that we have been through with a new administrator and a new assistant administrator and filling some of those roles. So we've sort of taken on a different, more dynamic approach to this. I think it's a great idea to step back and allow us to sort of solidify how we feel as a board. And I think my hope would be we do that and we will report back to you and we take the next steps. That would be
That's
my immediate response. Robin, what do you think?
So I think the process overall works well. I completely agree with you, Mary. The form is problematic. I think
Yes.
we had also talked about maybe there were some additional items that we should add to the form.
Mhm.
So I think if we could in the next few months address that so that when it comes to actually doing the evaluation, we can utilize the new form because it is problematic. You know, I personally like the way it works by each of us sending you our evaluations and then you compiling it into one form. So I would ask you also to if you have suggestions on how we might be able to streamline that to help you as you go through the process of consolidating it. And then I would also ask Chris. I mean, Chris, you know, do you think the form includes all the right areas that we should be thinking about? Or are there things that you think that we should add to it? So, you know, I think it would be good to get input from all parties. And I appreciate you coming here today because we talk about it every year and then we put it away and then suddenly it's time to do the evaluation again and you just want to get it done on a timely basis and you say, okay, I'll do it next year. The one thing I realized this past year that we hadn't done, and I think that's on the Board of Selectmen, is we need to have a more formalized process on how to go about presenting the evaluation to the public. You know, we didn't really formalize that part of it, and I think it would be good to maybe think about how we should do that because you know, we're not always going to be here. It's not always going to be the three of us, but we should have a written policy or at least a framework for future boards to utilize.
I agree as well. The other thing that if in fact the thing you get to a point where the process is working, you know, and you're comfortable with it, you know, I am so far away from anything, you know, that a lot of what I see, I can judge it from afar. But maybe when this is settled up correctly, it should go into the administration somewhere in privacy, in HR somewhere else, because I see this once a year I'm not able to give the bigger picture because I don't see it on a regular basis. So that's something else you want to think. Happy to talk about it. I just don't, what happens is you get up to the last minute and then you kind of run to try to get it done.
Right. No, that's a good thing to consider as well.
Okay, so I'll leave it with you. Happy to talk to you again if you'd like to, whatever you'd like to do.
No,
Okay.
I think at a minimum, we need to do something with that form. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe Dave can help us. I'm wondering if there's a way maybe you put the form online or something. Because
Well,
it is,
you need to get it out of that framework, though. I mean, I think it almost needs to be retyped because I don't know
yeah,
what's in there.
it's a nightmare. I completely agree. It's a nightmare.
I don't know what things touch to. It's like
It has a
Very
mind of its own.
I have no idea where it came from.
I made it. That's where it came from. And what
Yeah,
I
but you
did
patched
was
a
I
whole lot of
simply
stuff together.
cobbled the bloody thing together to get the process going. I have no pride of authorship whatsoever. If you go back to the beginning, it was, we need a form. We need it tomorrow. And
Right.
that's what happens every
I
time.
think we
I
actually
look at a series
started
of,
with the superintendent evaluation search
yeah,
firm
that's
form
right. That's right.
and
That's
started pulling it apart. But it's a night, and it just does its own thing. I mean, it does its own thing. The form.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Also, in the context of our town administrator today versus our town administrator, 4 years ago, it's a very different context. It's a very different contextual review
Yeah.
of
No,
a
that's
very
right.
different time and place. So
Yeah.
it as I said, it's dynamic, and I agree with what Robin and Bob have said. So it's a work in progress.
Well, I'm
So,
available
Mary,
whenever you want to chat about it. I just wanted to talk to you and say, let's think about it.
And Mary, just on behalf of the board, I think we've all said it. Thank you. We really appreciate the work that you do and put into this, and all the work that goes into many of these processes. As Bob said about Kate's, presentation, we do recognize how many of these things have evolved, and it's a lot of work at every step along the way. So, thank you.
So Mary, Robin's point about policy, taking our intention going back 2.5 or 3 years ago was to create a process to do valuations for the town administrator.
Mhm.
That process starts with the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator setting goals and priorities for the upcoming year. And the town administrator reviews that on a quarterly basis. So that's all part of the process.
Yep.
So that as you get closer to May, or you start to do, there was clearly a lot of information that's been presented that we see on a regular basis that goes into the form. And so the form is a way to capture the information, right? And as I said, it is what it is. But the process of reviewing, the process of writing the form, being specific about examples, doing ratings, and the clunky part comes because of the different rules around public employees and their need for privacy and that kind of stuff. And that we stole from the superintendent review process. And so we each do one, it gets consolidated by you, and then it goes back out to the town administrator. And I agree with Robin, we really didn't focus, we didn't really focus on what the public presentation should be, other than that we had a public presentation and it represented what was in the document. So that is an area that needs to be addressed. But from a content point of view, I think from my perspective, when I write this, it's based on actual goals and objectives, actual accomplishments that have been reviewed on a regular basis. And I do think it's important to have people write comment, not just check boxes. And that way you get the flavor. And then the back end of the process is we each review our documents with Chris after the fact, give him an opportunity, so he has an opportunity to discuss this thing, et cetera, et cetera. And so from a 360 sort of point of view, at least from the board's point of view, I think from my perspective, it's worked pretty well. And I've talked to Chris about it. And Chris, I'd like you to hear what you have to say about the process now as well, please.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, the process that the town employed upon my arrival is one that is pretty much the same in all Massachusetts municipalities, one that I'm familiar with. And what I like about it is that it's it's broad reaching and that it captures really all of the facets of of what's a pretty dynamic job. It's not just looking at one particular project or one particular area, but it covers everything from communications to project management to leadership, which is really nice. So, the form, as I see it for myself personally, has been a great tool to get feedback from the board and to reflect upon the prior year's performance. And I also think that, beyond me, it's a good form and structure that, another town administrator with experience in the business would be appreciative of, as it's something that I'm sure is familiar to them. The only thing I'd want to just mention to the board is that I appreciate opportunities for continuous improvement, which we're all in the business of. But I would just strongly suggest that if the board's interested in changing the structure of the form or the public presentation, that you engage Labor Council in that process. There's just some nuances related to the open meeting law and your contractual obligation with me that you just want to keep in mind.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you all, and if I can help, let me know. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great, Mary. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 3, the Dover Water Use Restriction Bylaw. Dave Sullivan.
Thank you,
You,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman. I'm going to share my screen real fast and
Thank you.
start my presentation. All right, so like all our other discussions today, this is something that's been, I think, a long time coming, and it's been in the works for quite a while. I'd like to thank the Water Resource Committee for their efforts in building the base from which the staff group could work upon, and thank Courtney and Kate for their assistance in this process as well. So I'd like to talk about our proposed water use restriction bylaw, get into the background and the process and where we're at in the process, discuss some of the regulatory research we've done, then get into the bylaw and break it down by usually look at presenting bylaws by first touching upon the authority and purpose, the applicability, the regulations that apply, the public notification piece of it, and then enforcement. So the process to date, when we first were charged with this task to look into a water restriction bylaw, started to look and see what some local towns did in the area, and started to review their bylaws, and also looked at the DEP template, which they were all based upon, which we wanted to make sure that we had the latest version, which is the 2018 updated version. We reviewed the legal framework, which these towns had built upon, and the DEP template was built upon. Drafted our first initial bylaw draft, and then sent it out for some targeted feedback, discussed it with the town administrator, and then sent it out to our town council and to Aquarian to make sure that we were covering all our bases and making sure that this would be a holistic bylaw that would cover not only the 30% that are under public water supply, but also those who have private wells as well. So based on that feedback, we did a second draft and sent it off to the Water Resource Committee, and then had a presentation with them, took their feedback, and did a final review with legal. And now we're at the process where we are reviewing it with the Board of Selectmen. So one of the most important aspects is to make sure, as I mentioned, that we're covering private wells. And private wells and public wells here in Dover both draw from the same aquifer. they're taking from the same protected water supply, and they both do require to be regulated. Some of the data sources we looked at were the DEP laws and regulations, the hydrology study that our consultant Kleinfelder had done, our monitoring wells, and then the Mass River Alliance, which put out a great report and showed that you can, in fact, regulate private wells, and demonstrated that there are actually 3 towns in Massachusetts that already do this: Falmouth, Hamilton, and Wenham. And Hamilton and Wenham are very similar to Dover, both in size and demographic. So our authority and purpose, so the authority is granted to the town under the Home Rule Charter and also under the Department of Environmental Protection. And the purpose of this bylaw, I just took it straight from the bylaw, but it's basically, to break it down, it's to protect and make sure that we have a healthy and safe water supply for all residents. And also to ensure that we're protecting the environment and habitat as well. So the applicability, so we want to make sure that this, again, as I said, covers all public and private water users of the town of Dover public water system and the groundwater that's contained within the borders of Dover. So this would be businesses, private residents, the town. So for the regulations, there are 3 main regulations that the water restriction would use, the bylaw would use. The first would be a declaration of a state of water supply conservation. The mechanism of this would be the Board of Selectmen. They can declare this, and then we can go ahead and start to restrict water use. The other 2 are the state of water supply emergency. This is declared by the Department of Environmental Protection. And then the most serious one, the state of drought, which is also by the Department of Environmental Protection. And the state has their guidance, and I think everybody's very familiar with this, the levels. So that would fall under the state of drought. So public notification. So when any of these water restrictions are issued, we have 48 hours to notify the public. So this being a key piece of this, we wanted to make sure that we went through the process. So town website, Kate and I would work on that. Social media would be Kate and Courtney. The bulletin boards would be Kate. Outdoor signage would be Board of Health and Town Highway Department. So I believe we'll start to discuss bringing the signs over to the Highway Department. Email alerts would be Board of Health and myself. If we had to go to a text alert to a code red, that would be the Emergency Management. And public meetings would be covered under Chris and the Board of Selectmen. So another aspect of this is who would enforce this. So when we looked at these towns, we reached out and we talked with these communities to find out who in the towns mostly enforces this. The bylaw is written in a way where we have some flexibility, but we do want to make sure that we are following best practices that other communities have used. And most communities are using their DPW as the sole or most common responsible entity for enforcing the restrictions. So we would use that framework as well in Dover and have the DPW enforce the Dover regulations as well. So this was a very broad overview of our bylaw. And are there any questions?
Thanks, Dave. Well done. Just purely from a practical standpoint, and the enforcement, not to get to the enforcement part, but the notification part, and the when we reach a level, is that level? Are those the levels that you put up? Are those a uniform? Like how when we're asked that question, how do we respond to where are these established?
So the levels that were shown in the presentation come from the state. So that comes from DEP itself.
Got it.
But there may be, there may be a time when Dover has a water emergency that the rest of the state may not have, and that's why the Board of Selectmen have that authority as well under the Home Rule Charter.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Robin?
I don't have any questions. That was great, Dave. Thank you.
Bob?
So I have one question and one comment. For the longest time, we've heard that we don't have the ability to monitor or affect private wells. And at the presentation that you guys gave to the Water Resource Committee, I thought there were distinctions being made between private wells that are close to public water sources and private wells that are remote from public water sources. And when I looked at the regulations that you guys put together, you talk about regulating water in the town of Dover. And I just want to make sure that the issues that were raised at the Water Resources Committee meeting have been addressed and that we can actually do town of water. And I think people were referring to common law. So and maybe an outdated understanding of, the water under my property is my water. And maybe the recognition that today we understand that there are aquifers that feed the neighborhood, so to speak, and that all here is gone. So I know it was a point of contention. I don't know if it was resolved. I did read the language. We talk about having the authority to regulate water use in the town of Dover. Is that all fine now?
Yeah, so I sent off the comments to town council, and then actually met with town council and went through the bylaw and actually discussed what was brought up at the Water Resources Committee. And from what town council said, they understood the concern, and basically that home rule charter supersedes that. So under home rule charter, we do have the authority to regulate water within the border of the town of Dover.
That's really good, because that's an old issue that's been a thorn in our sides for a very long period of time. Now,
and I think so. Town council wasn't surprised that we brought that up, and and I think other communities have been going through this as well, and that's why they all point to the home rule charter and the strength of that law as well.
well, thank you very much, Dave. Presentation was really good. My comment was the water in the opening slide should have ripples.
I wanted
Get up on animation.
Dave, that's just some bias that Bob has. So
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Robin, if no other comments or questions, I'm going to go to the motion, and I move to approve Dover's water use restriction bylaw as presented, and ask for a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
So moved. Well, thank you very much. David, well done. We're going to move to item 4, which is a review of the ambulance rates and a potential vote. Treasurer Collector Jerry Lane. Hello, Jerry. How are you?
Okay, I think I'm off mute now. Hello. I have no fancy slides and no ripples.
Thank goodness. Thank good. But you got long flowing hair. I like that.
So you have a memo on the rates, and so what the proposed rate would do would add the 5.1% that the Medicare rates are going up to our rates. And that would keep us adjusting gradually rather than what we did a year and a half ago, 2 years, in terms of doing just one big jump all of a sudden.
Which I'm in favor of the small, consistent step-ups. So thank you for this. Any questions? Robin, Bob?
No, I think that we did a catch-up that year, though, didn't we?
We did,
Isn't that the reason
yes.
behind it? So now we should be pretty much on even keel with the other providers.
Yeah, we are not the most aggressive in terms of setting the rates, but we're competitive.
Good, okay.
Robin, you good?
Good.
So I move to increase Dover's current ambulance rates by the 5.1% for 2022 and ask for a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett. Thanks, Jerry.
One more.
Oh,
One more. So the summary of item number 5, also by Jerry, is the town's practice to abate ambulance bills as uncollectible if there have been no activity on the account for 2.5 years, dating from July 2nd, 2018 through June 3rd, 2019. 6 bills totaling $3,761.03 remain uncollected. I really don't think there's a whole lot of discussion or debate about this. Robin, Bob, do you want to add anything?
no, we discussed this, I think, whenever we bumped the rates the last time. So I think this is a
Yeah,
straightforward.
this is a procedural thing. Robin?
I'm good.
I move to approve the abatement of the 6 bills covering the period of July 2nd, 2018 through June 3rd, 2019 in the amount of $3,761.03 and ask for a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett. Now, thank you, Jerry.
Thank you all and good night.
Good night.
Good night, Jerry. So item, excuse me, item 6 is to approve and execute the final warrant. We mentioned at the opening remarks that we were not able to do this. We will do this on the 3rd of March.
Oh, it's hard to believe it's almost March.
It is. It really is. So we're going to move to the Board of Selectmen updates, item 7. A couple of quick notes from my side. Chris and I, with Town Council, are moving along with the negotiations of the highway and the union negotiations for the employees, the union employees at the highway. We met last week, and we are making progress in the negotiations. I have a question regarding the mask mandates for Chris. Chris, have the mask mandates been lifted at all town buildings tomorrow, or are they being lifted when the kids return from school?
I can't answer that for you, John. The latest I heard from the Board of Health is that the only mandate that has been lifted is the mask mandate in commercial buildings in Dover. The mask mandate applies to all other facilities in the town.
And the state has removed the statewide mandate is removed effective the 28th.
The state is recommending removal of mask wearing for most people. Yes, that is the guidance they released this week.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Robin, anything you'd like to add?
So just a quick update. We're getting pretty close to coming to the Board of Selectmen with a recommendation for the consultant we would like to use to put together the long-range strategic plan for water. I think, my opinion is that the process worked really well. We got 2 bidders and they were both excellent. It was very difficult to make a decision. And as many of us said in our follow-up meeting, you couldn't go wrong with either party. We have asked the town administrator to check references on the consultants and get back to us. And I would expect the next meeting or potentially the meeting after, depending what's on the agenda, we will make a formal presentation to the Board of Selectmen. It was a very, very robust process. It wasn't just the Board of Selectmen. We had representatives from the Planning Board, representative from the Water Resource Task Force, and the town administrator, the land use manager, Dave Sullivan was there, and Carl. So it was a really great Warnick. It was really, and everybody was vocal and everybody stated their opinions, and it really was a great process. So I look forward to making a recommendation to the board and beginning the work that needs to get done.
Was everybody disagreeable?
Everybody was modest. It was interesting. It was a very hard decision for everybody to make.
I just said everybody disagreeable. I meant to say the opposite. But
it was a very, very good process. And I think Chris and Dave, it was pretty efficient.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you both. Thank you all, rather. Bob, anything you'd like to add?
I have two quick updates on Carol. So we heard earlier in the week that the documentation submission, the construction documents, the preparation of the construction documents that sent out the bid are going to be delayed by about 2 to 4 weeks. The architect simply had to, I think he said there's over 1,000 pages of design or diagrams that he has to go through to make sure that they're all up to snuff. So rather than having gone out, that would sit in through that delay process. Talking with Ford, who had talked both to the architect and to Phil, they don't really expect a knock-on effect, but people should be aware that that has occurred. And the other thing, working with Chris, Kate Canny, Mark Gilhoney, and Janet Claypool, we put together a little working group to sift through the research that CMAC had done last spring to focus on areas of community center management and sort of fee structures, to ultimately make a recommendation to the board on how that we think the building should be managed and what sort of staffing component we might expect. Chris may have more to say about that, but we had our first meeting this week, and the group seems to be a pretty good group to work with. That's it. Oh, John, on Hale, any action on Hale?
No, we haven't had any. The Hale Task Force has not met since we met last, and we gave the update last week.
I keep forgetting we're meeting every week now.
Yeah. Chris, has there been anything on your side for Hale other than I've been at Hale a lot these past, ridden in Hale a whole lot these past few weeks with regards to the snow. So yeah, Chris, anything you'd like to add?
No, just John lets me do the updates while he gets to ride around the facility. He's got the better end of the deal on that one. So the only thing I'd add is that the Hale group and the trustees of reservations have gotten together, spoke with them on Friday of last week. They are finalizing in draft form what the conceptual conservation restriction will look like over the entire property. There'll be a lot of detail behind that in terms of what the conservation restriction looks like for the actual Hale area. That's not going to be a full CR, because that's important, right? The details of that are pretty critical, because it could sway one way or the other in terms of what their potential future usage could look like or would look like. They're also going to highlight existing trails as well as trail connectivity opportunities. So what they're going to do is really lay out everything in a kind of a map form. They had mentioned that they would have a draft of that to me by tomorrow, at which point John and I connected this week. He and I are going to meet with a couple of other folks on the town side that we talked about a few weeks ago at the last board meeting to review that map, review the details, have any follow-up conversations that might be needed with Hale and the trustees after the fact, but really kind of start the process of shaping out what the CR could look like amongst the three entities, so that we continue to move along the clip that the board has expressed that we move along to really line this up for a fall town meeting. So, I'm optimistic that we'll be able to present something or have a dialogue with the full board, sometime in, pretty early spring. So there's a great energy, not only from the Dover side, but the Hill and the trustees side. So, I'm pleased with how quickly things have already progressed just over the past couple of weeks. So we'll keep you posted during these meetings. And then, of course, when we get something, we'll talk about how we present that to the full board and negotiate that and move forward.
Yeah. Well, prior to that meeting that Chris mentioned on Wednesday of last week, I rode in the section of Hale that is on the south side, the sort of the south side of Powasset, where sort of, behind the transfer station, behind the solar array, from the Powasset farm all the way down to the power lines. And just, to get a sense of, there's lots of conversation and there's lots of detailed discussions about where lots are and what lots are actual feasible. And then there's the reality of the pipeline, the gas line, the power lines, the Dover transfer station, the solar array. So it was very, very helpful to do that prior to what Chris had just mentioned with Eric Arnold and his people, because that area is an area that seemingly it's not as simple as it looks on paper in terms of what to do, what can be done with that whole area. So anyway, just a little bit of help from insight.
It's always good to look at walk the land,
Oh
You
yeah.
never know what you're gonna find.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's you do it, and then you look down on the maps and the color coded maps of what areas are A&R lots and what areas are not A&R lots, and you sort of try to contextualize, okay, what is the reality of what we're asking for? So it was helpful.
Good to know,
Thanks,
John.
Chris. Chris, you want to go move right to your report?
I would just ask before I do if the board wanted to review and discuss anything related to the upcoming agendas.
Thank you.
I can't believe that we have caucus and we have warrant committee open hearing and, on the page that I'm looking at.
Yeah, we do.
So we have the 27th for the BOH meeting?
Next.
The 24th, I think.
24th, it's
Next
Thursday
Next
Thursday.
Thursday.
Next Thursday. Okay.
at 7, right?
Yeah, it looked like, I think 7, yes.
Do you have a conflict, Robin? Was that, were you just reiterating that?
I was just reiterating that, and I have to make sure I look at my calendar. I'll just go off doing stuff at 7. I've been known to do that.
The invite says 7 to 8.
Yeah, if I don't look at my calendar, I go
Yeah.
off, do my own thing.
The Robin Hunter muscle memory, you have, I'm supposed to be at this meeting at that time, that meeting at that time, it automatically starts for you.
And then sometimes my calendars, I swear, there are meetings on there, and then they disappear. Because I keep all the separate calendars, and for the life of me, I don't know.
That's because you hit delete. You're not supposed to hit delete.
No, I don't, because
There's
I go
a meeting
looking for
earlier
the
in the week,
meeting
you
in the trash, and it's not there, so I don't know what happens.
Sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
So it's not I'm just saying, it may not be a bad idea to remind me about the meeting at some point during the day next Thursday.
No,
Okay.
Yeah, we've had
Point.
that problem this
Eight.
week, guys.
Kate, did you get that point? That's a subtle reminder from Robin.
Chris and Dave already know. They know to just text me and go, "Where are you?"
Well, Chris had to do the "Where are you?" to a couple of members of our highway department. One was plowing Channing Pond, and the other was in a plow somewhere behind Carol, and they both said, "Uh-oh, we'll be right there." So it happens to all of us. I'm as guilty as everyone. So thank you all for those reminders. Chris?
Thank you, John. The only thing I'd like to do is just quickly recognize and thank a whole host of people on the town staff. As the board knows or should recall, a few weeks ago, the Board of Health came to you and presented and made the case for COVID test distribution to help support the community during the height of the Omicron variant. And the board voted to move forward. And then really what that left us was, well, figuring out how we move forward and make it happen. And there was an incredible amount of work that went into the logistics of the distribution, the communication of it. And it went off without a hitch, and we're able to service over hundreds and hundreds of residents. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to publicly recognize Janet Claypool, Kate O'Brien, Chief McGowan, Dave Sullivan, Janet's team, as well as Bobby Tosi for really the Herculean effort of dropping what they were doing, or sometimes continuing what they were doing to help put this thing together. But we received great feedback on the event, and I think it was a great success and just a really great team effort. So I just wanted to, again, just take the opportunity to recognize them and thank them for all the great work that they did. That's it.
So Chris, one thing, I'm assuming we have residual test kits. Do we have idea what we're going to do with them?
We do, yeah, a couple of things. We've set aside a small amount for staff in case there's a variant that comes up. There's also been talk about setting aside some for the town meeting, which the board voted on last time to have in person. So in case we're in a situation, it might be good to have those available before the meeting, as well as some distribution points now and in the near future out of the COA, as well as through the Board of Health. Kate, am I missing it?
I thought the test kits had an expiry date.
They do. Oh, sorry. I'll jump in here. So they do have an expiration date. It's listed at the end of March, but the manufacturer extended it for 3 more months. And I will just add to Chris, the Board of Health starting next week, Monday through Thursdays, if you need a test, all you have to do is come in. You can call them, but from 9 o'clock to 3, if any Dover resident needs a test, they're in the Board of Health office.
Do we know of other communities who may be in need, other COAs, or if we have an overload, I wouldn't mind thinking about others besides just the town. That's what my point.
Sure, that's something to think about. I can contact Janet Claypool and see if her connections in other towns, other council on agings, if they need
I
tests.
think we should have a good reserve for things we need, but if we have excess, then we should think about how to be charitable.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to add? Charitable donations, charitable inclinations is honorable charitable inclinations.
Are you done?
But they're disagreeable.
No, Robin, she owns the disagreeable.
No, I just want to move this along. I have things I need to do. I'm sure everybody else does too.
Of course you do. We're going to move to the consent agenda. The following items are included in the consent agenda. employment agreement with town accountant, approve special one-day liquor license for February 19th, 26th, March 18th, 19th, and 22nd, all of which Robin did not get invited to.
Because I'm disagreeable, one might say.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented and ask for a second.
I will second that.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
And
I've
John,
never
I
known you to be
congratulate you. You ended the meeting before the
Appointed minute?
estimated time of conclusion.
Absolutely.
Keep it up.
Oh, I move for an adjournment of the meeting of February 17th and ask for a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer. Thank you all. Have a good weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Great job. Great presentations. You guys are
Except for the one, no ripples on the water.
It doesn't matter. It's the content that matters.
We
Don't
don't
listen
care
to
about
the-
content. We're all about show.
There.
I thought they looked excellent. So all of them. So,
Very
Thank
well
you.
done,
thank
everyone.
you, everyone.
Have
Great
fun,
night.
folks.
Bye-bye.